What's that noise? What? Did someone break into my house again? What? What? Nefarious?
What?
Did you stay up all night binging Anbernics?
You know, I think I might have had one too many.
Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Mikhailov from Team Retrogue, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. So yesterday I was sitting in my office here enjoying a Powkiddy handheld because I hadn't really played with a Powkiddy handheld in a while. And suddenly the doorbell rang and it was Nefarious, and he just showed up to steal from me as always because that's what he does. And he handed me a piece of mail that he surprisingly didn't steal from me, and it was this device here, the Anbernic RG406V. I actually was not expecting to get this device this early because it doesn't go on sale until Thursday. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and drop everything, and we're going to put this device through its paces, and we're going to see if it's worth your hard-earned dollar bucks. So with that, let's dive in and get to work. At time of recording, the Anbernic RG406V will be going on sale this Thursday, September 19th at 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This unit was provided to me by Anbernic for the purposes of this review. As is always required, all opinions are my own, I'm not being paid, and they are not seeing this video before it is published. It's time to hop on our mount and ride into Spec Town. The RG406V is powered by a Unisoc T820 processor. The GPU is a quad-core Mali G57. The device has 8GB of LPDDR4X RAM and utilizes 128GB of storage with microSD card expansion. The screen is a 4-inch IPS touchscreen with OCA lamination and a 960x720 resolution. Giving the device life is a 5500 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi capable of 2.4 and 5 GHz built in, as well as Bluetooth 5.0. The device ships with Android 13. So let's unbox the RG406V. Inside the box is the unit, user manual, and charging cable. Nothing too fancy here, but the unit does come with a screen protector this time. Now let's tour the device starting at the top, where you'll find the USB-C port and exhaust for the active cooling this handheld is equipped with. Now let's actually move to the back of the device and talk about these triggers. When I reviewed the Anbernic RG405V, these triggers were the worst part about this style of handheld because my fingers would accidentally press them constantly. I had to wedge a piece of electrical tape into the sides of the buttons to prevent them from actuating. I'm happy to announce this is not a problem anymore, and these triggers are way better. I can rest my fingers comfortably, and they won't trigger unless I want them to. That was a major sticking point with me on the 405V, so I'm glad that they fixed it for this model. The D-pad is your typical mushy rubber membrane connection. Anbernic has gotten good with their D-pads, and it passes both the Contra test as well as the Street Fighter test. I'm not really a fan of these face buttons, however. They seem a little too raised and a little too close together. It's very easy to accidentally hit two buttons at the same time, and your button presses need to be deliberate. It's not a deal breaker, but it could impact precision gaming. The joysticks stick out a little more than I would like, but they did fix an issue that has been very prominent on these devices lately: cardinal snapping. If I compare this device to its sister handheld, the RG Cube, you can see the Cube has this issue where the joystick just kind of snaps to the 4 cardinal directions. This didn't really bother me on the Cube because I've been primarily using it as a D-pad game device, like for Nintendo DS and Game Boy Advance. But if I play a game like Super Mario 64, you could see the issue is much more prominent because Mario is much harder to control. However, on the 406V, the joysticks are more precise, meaning I could walk or sneak in diagonal directions in games like Mario 64 with no issue. We'll talk a little more about why this fix is a massive improvement a little later in the video, but for now, let's continue with the device tour. We're actually going to talk about the joysticks a little more as well as the screen. The joysticks have LEDs around them that are really bright. If I turn the studio lights off, you'll notice that not only are the LEDs bright, but the screen itself at 100% brightness is also so bright that I'm struggling to get my iPhone camera to focus on the screen content. Well, you could turn down the brightness of the screen, you cannot change the brightness of the LED lights. You can only select from specific lighting presets. I like LEDs as much as the next person, but I don't like not being able to adjust them to my personal liking. In situations like this, I just turn the lights off and move on with my life. The 4-inch screen is also an interesting choice. The screen has a 960 by 720 resolution, which means that games will look absolutely beautiful. 4x3 content like NES and SNES will have small black bars on the sides of the device if you select the core provided scaling option in RetroArch, but selecting 4x3 will set the games to be the correct aspect ratio by taking up the entirety of the screen. Game Boy and Game Boy Color will have bigger borders, but we're typically used to that anyway, and Game Boy Advance will look surprisingly gorgeous on this device with only minimal bars on the top and bottom. The left side also has a slot for microSD card expansion, as well as a button that opens Anbernic's custom launcher. The right side of the device houses the power and volume buttons, and the bottom has 2 downward-facing speakers and a 3.5mm headphone jack. I feel that we've addressed a lot about this device just from the tour, so let's push the handheld to the limit and try some gaming. Now let's start with some Dreamcast using the Redream emulator. I wanted to try Sonic Adventure specifically because I wanted to see how Sonic would control with these new joysticks. Now Sonic is a pain to control in these games on a good day, but I'm happy to report that he controls decently compared to previous Anbernic devices that I've tested. The same goes for Nintendo GameCube. If I pull up the GameCube version of the same Sonic game, I get equally as good control. I would even argue that the GameCube version of Sonic Adventure is the definitive version, and the 406V handles it very well using an OpenGL backend. PS2 is where we start to see this device hit its ceiling, but more lightweight games like Gradius 5 will perform pretty well at a 2x resolution. Nintendo DS will play well, but of course Drastic looks kind of funny with both screens at the same time like this. On a handheld like this, I prefer to set Drastic to just have the one screen, and I bounce back and forth between the two as needed. The DS version of Chrono Trigger typically only needs one screen anyway, so this is a perfect example of a DS game that will play on this handheld very well. Now I had to put the 406V into high performance mode for 3DS, and even then, I had to play Metroid Samus Returns at a native resolution in order to get the correct speed, which is kind of a shame on a 720p screen like this. More lightweight games, on the other hand, will play at a 2x resolution and work pretty well. I would consider 3DS more of a bonus and temper your expectations for this system. Android gaming is about what you would expect as far as compatibility. Most games will adjust to the aspect ratio of the screen, and others will place 16:9 borders on the top and bottom, making for more of a less than ideal experience. Anbernic has a janky but functional button mapper for games that don't have controller support, such as Chameleon Run and Downwell. Downwell looks a little funky on this device though because you have to force landscape mode, causing the game to squish. I actually prefer this game much better on a 1-to-1 screen device such as the RG406V. Now let's start to wrap things up with my final thoughts. Let's start with the ergonomics and the badonk in the back of this device. I said this in my RG405V review, and I'll repeat it here as well. I like the badonk. I feel it gives me a good grip on this vertically oriented device. When a handheld has a flat back, it's harder to find a place for me to rest my hands, and this device is definitely more comfortable to hold, especially for longer play sessions. While we're talking about holding the device, let's talk about the fact that every issue I've had with the 405V has been fixed with this iteration, including the shoulder and trigger buttons. They no longer accidentally actuate at the slightest of pressure, and I don't have to rely on small fixes like electrical tape in order to properly use the device. This is also a fairly powerful handheld, and because it's running Android 13 and has Play Store support, it can emulate a fair number of systems including GameCube, PS2, with a sprinkling of 3DS, and of course you have Android gaming on top of that. But of course, no device is perfect, so let's take a look at some of the negatives. I am not a fan of these face buttons at all. They don't feel quite right, and they are bunched a little too close together. I don't recall that issue on the 405V, so I'm not sure why that change was made now. The LEDs are just too bright, and there really isn't much in the way of customization of said LEDs, so it doesn't make sense to even have them. Anbernic probably could have shaved a few dollars off the cost of the device by just simply not including them. Which leads us to this conversation about price. This device has a starting price of $155 US, and that's with a $10 early bird coupon. Now granted, there is the power to back up this price, but with Retroid right around the corner with the Retroid Pocket Mini, a device that offers an OLED screen and a Snapdragon chip for only $50 more than this handheld, the 406V can very easily get lost in the hype. Let's not forget, there's also another vertical handheld by Anbernic called the RG406V that can offer a similar experience for older games like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, but that handheld is only $65. Don't get me wrong, the Anbernic RG406V is a great handheld. I called the 405V my favorite vertical, and this only improves upon that. I just don't know how this handheld fits in the current market unless you really like the 405V or the 40XX-V and you want to upgrade to a better experience. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device you are considering? Do you have one? And what do you think is the best use case for a device like this? And please feel free to continue the conversation on both the Retro Handhelds and the Steam Machine Discords, where you could find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show, like these wonderful people on the screen, you can do so by going to my Patreon page. Links to all of those places are in the video description. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow and allows me to get more content out to you. But until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.